Within each cell, there are chemical compounds. The chemical compounds are made of things called elements. Elements are any substance that cannot be broken down into simpler substances. And you can see a list of all of the elements on the periodic table. Some examples of elements are oxygen and nitrogen. A compound is two or more elements that are chemically combined. So, when we study things like water, we can say that that's a compound because it is made of hydrogen and oxygen, which are two different elements. Within cells, there are several very important chemical compounds, the first of which is water. Water is important for three main reasons. It helps dissolve chemicals that the cells need to use. It helps the cell keep its size and shape. And it helps keep the temperature of the cells from changing rapidly. Carbohydrates are other compounds that are necessary for cells to function. Carbohydrates are energy-rich, and they are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which are all elements. They are important because they provide energy for the cell, and they also are a component of some cell parts, such as the cellulose that cell walls are made of in plant cells. Lipids, not lips, are very important, and another word for them is fats. Lipids are important because they are energy-rich. They have more energy than carbohydrates, and they are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They help provide energy for the cell, and they also make up most of the cell membrane. Proteins are another compound that are important. Those are large organic molecules that are made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. We can find them in meat, eggs, fish, nuts, and beans. They are made up of not 20, but 21 amino acids. Since the writing of our textbook, there actually has been another amino acid that has been discovered. You can think of amino acids like letters in the alphabet that build words. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. They help form parts of cell membranes and the organelles that are within cells. Enzymes are a special type of protein. They help speed up chemical reactions in living things. So, for example, in your saliva, when you put food in your mouth, the saliva has enzymes in them that help begin the process and speed up the process of digestion so that you're able to get the nutrients from your food more quickly. Proteins are responsible for the formation of things like a bird's feathers, a spider web, and even your fingernails. Nucleic acids are very important as we begin to study DNA. They are very long organic molecules that are made of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and they help contain the instructions that your cells need to carry out all of their functions. Nucleic acids build something called DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid. Deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA has all of the genetic material that carries information about an organism. Your DNA carries information about you, and it's passed from parent to offspring. We'll study that more when we get to genetics. It's used to direct all of the cell's functions, and we find DNA in the chromatin in the nucleus. Something that's very similar to DNA, but a little different, is something called RNA, which is ribonucleic acid. It is found in the cytoplasm of a cell as well as the nucleus, and it is responsible for the production of proteins. As we move forward, we'll begin to connect how amino acids help us build proteins and where your cells learn how to read the DNA. While studying the parts of cells, we have learned that the cell membrane is selectively permeable and allows some things in and other things out of the cell. There are two main ways that things can move in and out of a cell. The first is through something called passive transport. The word passive should make you think of low energy. So, in passive transport, movement of dissolved materials, another reason why water is very important, through a cell membrane moves without using any cellular energy. And there are two special kinds of ways that this can occur. The first is through something called diffusion, and that is the process by which small molecules move across the cell membrane. Things always move from a high concentration to a low concentration. So, on this side, you can see I have a high concentration of some substance. And I drew an arrow moving toward the side that has a very low concentration of it. Things will always move from high to low concentrations. Molecules always move and bump into each other, which push them away from each other. So you can see here in this picture, there is clearly a cell with a high concentration of something outside of its cell membrane and a low concentration inside. What will occur is that the molecules that are on the outside will diffuse into the cell so that there is an equal quantity. Osmosis is a specific type of diffusion. It is the diffusion of water molecules through a selectively permeable membrane. Water molecules move by diffusion from highly concentrated areas through the cell membrane to areas that are less concentrated. So, if we think about our red blood cells, we know that they should be round, and when you look at this first picture here, all of the dots are representing water. So in a normal red blood cell, it would be round, and there would be an equal distribution of water molecules outside and inside. When a high water concentration is on the outside of the cell, what will occur is that through the process of osmosis, the water molecules will move into the cell, which can cause problems because it can overfill that cell with water. In cases such as dehydration, what can occur is that there can actually be a low water concentration outside of the cell. So if there's more water inside the cell than outside of the cell, the water, which always moves from a high concentration to a low concentration, will move outside of the cell and can impact the overall shape of it, which causes it to flow very differently through the body. There's also a process called active transport, and in this process, the movement of material through the cell membrane actually uses cellular energy. There are these small ports called active transport proteins that work to pick up molecules that are outside or inside of the cell and actually carry them in or out. Examples of things that might be actively transported are calcium, potassium, and sodium. You can see here this picture. Active transportation requires the cell use energy, and you can see this little purple port. That is the transport protein. You can see a high concentration of molecules inside of the cell as a low concentration outside of the cell. And you can see that through this active transportation, it actually has to move these materials in. A second form of active transport is through engulfing. So a cell membrane can simply just close around a particle. Here's an image of a single-celled organism, an amoeba, actually engulfing its food. You can see that it's surrounding it and eventually will close in, and that will be how it actively gets the food source into it. It engulfs to form active transportation. Finally, we've discussed that cells are very small. They are measured in units that are 1/1,000,000th of a meter in size. And this is very important because the reason why they are small is exactly connected to its function, which is that is how materials can move in and out of the cell. If they were very large, the process that they use through diffusion and osmosis, which are passive transportation, or active transportation, simply wouldn't work.